welcome on in to another episode of Getting Wild with Terry and Friends, NHL Season Preview Show Edition. And here we have the final team, the Montreal Canadiens, for us to go over. The Boston Bruins video will be up shortly after the show is done. But looking at Montreal, a rough year last year for the Habs, but they got the first overall pick. Kind of a rough first game in preseason for him, and everybody's ready to say the sky's falling with him. It's one preseason game. I think he's had another preseason game since then, but give him a break. He's a young prospect. It's going to take time. He won't necessarily start off as a superstar in his first game in preseason. So I'm not ready to sound the alarm yet when it comes to that, but we'll jump in and we'll look at the additions and subtractions. These are the main additions and subtractions for the Habs this year. And they did it by trade. Dadonov, Kirby Dach, Mike Matheson, and Sean Monahan all brought into the organization and leaving Paquette, Ryan Poehling, Jeff Petrie. Some other more AHL-type guys left as well. But overall, not a huge offseason when it comes to the number of players leaving and going for the Habs, but they improved. Adding Dadonov, adding Mike Matheson, adding Kirby Dach, even Sean Monahan, who has been injured. If he is healthy and can play even 40 games of the year, that's really going to help this Montreal team, as I think they've drastically improved with those guys on the team this year. Occupancy, additions, subtractions for Montreal. What do you think?
Yeah, Montreal Canadiens obviously had a rough go of it last year, but they are really doing their best to bring in a couple new players, maybe add a little bit of spark to their core. I think Evgeny Dadonov player props are always an interesting look. If you look at his October last year, he cleared, and it's going to be interesting with what they set the lines at for a shot on goal. If it's 1.5 or 2.5, I'm not sure. But that's an interesting look, because he's a good player that maybe kind of gets lost, in the radar of other teams, and we can still make some money on him. Obviously you got Caulfield, Suzuki. These guys are going to be, putting up the bigger numbers. I believe Suzuki was just announced captain. So that's interesting. They want him to learn French because I don't think he speaks it. And they want their players and their coaches to do so. But, it's an organization that they're rebuilding. I mean, let's be real. But I think, every time Petrie, these guys go, he's in the box, maybe he puts up a couple points, but I think, losing him is okay. And, adding Doc, obviously he's a big guy, can help, Matheson, Monahan. I think it came out a little ahead with the additions and subtractions.
For sure. And Kirby Dach is young. So Chicago giving up on him, I don't know about that Chicago franchise. Obviously, we already discussed them in a hour-long show, but not the most sense that they're making to me anyways right now. But giving up Kirby Dach was kind of surprising. But going on to top prospects and upcoming free agents for the Habs, obviously their first-round pick, Slavkovsky, Caden Gould, Justin Barron, Joshua Roy, Jordan Harris. Montreal has defensemen on the way, and they have that top left winger now in Slavkovsky. Joshua Roy has some other prospects as well. Montreal doing pretty well when it comes to prospects. They may not have to do a long-term rebuild. It might be more of a retool here for Montreal. Looking at upcoming free agents, Dadonov, Schooneman, Jake Allen, Sean Monahan, Jonathan Drouin, Paul Byron, And then you've got Cole Caulfield as an RFA, Michael Pizzetta and Jordan Harris as well as RFAs. So some questions for the offseason for what Montreal is going to do. I'm sure Caulfield is going to want a bag of money, especially if he has a good year this year. He's going to want a big bag of money. So we'll see what Montreal does. Some questions here in the offseason and overall a good prospect pool for the Habs, especially when it comes to defense. Occupancy, prospects, upcoming free agents for Montreal. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Montreal is hoping Slavkovsky works out. Um, you know, they obviously thought him good enough to be that first pick. I think you're hitting right on the head with Caulfield. He's going to be wanting a good contract that competes with some of the other contracts that players of his caliber are getting. Last season, he had 23 goals, 20 assists. He was a minus 24, 10 penalty minutes, 67 games played. If he can be a 30 goal scorer, then I think he can, request that type of money. But he's got to get to the 30. 20 goal scorers, there's a lot of them. So 30 is really that next tier. With the other free agents, what are they doing in the crease is obviously a question. I'm not sure what Carey Price is slated to do. But Jake Allen, he's a solid goaltender. And behind them is going to be Montembeault and Primo. And I don't know if people watched their games last year, but they have work to do. And that doesn't mean that they're not going to be good goalies in the NHL, but it means that behind Jake Allen, there's a couple question marks out there into what they can do today, what they can do in the 2022-2023 season. So I think that's an interesting look. And then, what are you going to do with Paul Byron and Drouin? These are questions that we just got to see how the season starts playing out.
Yeah, for sure. How these guys do, I think, will determine a lot on what happens with their future. We will take a look here at the possible lineup that Cap Friendly has here for the Montreal Canadiens this year. Caulfield, Suzuki, and Mike Hoffman as the top line. Jonathan Drouin, Christian Dvorak, Josh Anderson. Number 3, Monahan, Dadonov, and Gallagher as the third line. Armia, Evans, and Doc on the fourth line. Montreal's offense looks pretty good. Looking at it, if everything goes well, this could be a very high-scoring team that has a lot of depth in all 4 lines, in my opinion here. When we get to defense, though, Matheson, obviously a great trade pickup from Pittsburgh. David Savard, Weidman, and then 3 prospects, basically. And Norlander on 4th prospect. So a young defense for Montreal. That will be a question mark. And as we said, Jake Allen, Samuel Montembeault, goaltending, another question mark. Jake Allen going to have to stand on his head here to keep Montreal in games. But I think Montreal's offense is kind of a little bit underrated. So I'll be looking definitely at Montreal team total overs. I think we may get some value, especially early on in the year with Montreal in general. So I'll be looking at them. And also full game overs because this defense and goaltending is still a bit rough on this team. So, those are my overall thoughts in the lineup. Occupancy, what do you think of the possible lineup for Montreal?
Yeah, I'm going to work starting from the crease and work out. Jake Allen, people forget he was a pretty critical part of that St. Louis Blues team that made a run. He was splitting time with Binnington. And then I don't know the details of what happened, but obviously the Blues chose Binnington. But But Jake Allen he's a great tender. He really is. You look at his career numbers. He hasn't had one season under 900 save percentage. Last year was his first year that he had over a 3 goals against average. So he's solid, and I think he can definitely win them some games. And then obviously from a betting perspective, Jake Allen's saves are going to be super interesting. Go look at his game logs. I mean, the type of numbers he's putting up is crazy. I mean, we're talking over 30, 33. He's got 40, 39. I mean, he ended the season not going under 30 saves, like once or twice. That's it. So this guy is just someone you want to keep an eye out. The books might sleep on him early on. If you see some like 27.5, 28.5 lines for Jake Allen saves, that's going to be a bet I'm taking. Working our way back out. Listen, the defense is suspect. David Savard and Mike Matheson on the first line. I'm not sure how that's going to pan out. I don't know too much about them, so I don't want to speak, too in depth. But just looking at it from like an NHL perspective, it doesn't seem like it's going to be able to contain some of these very high-powered offenses. But I'm not an NHL general manager. I didn't put these teams together. I'm just a fan. So that's just me, observing that. Look, the first line, Mike Hoffman is what he is. He's a good player. He's kind of like a Matt Duchene-esque player. He's got good puck handles. He can make some good passes. He's a good skater. Obviously Duchene, I think, lights the lamp a little more, but it's that similar, type of player that we see with Hoffman. I think he can feed Suzuki and Cole as much as they need to. Josh Anderson, big guy, throws a body around, good player with Dvorak and Drew, and that's going to be a pretty tough second line. I don't know how much they'll produce. I think it's going to be a tough second line, and then that third line can go either way. I mean, we know how Brendan Gallagher is. We know how Dadonov is and Monahan. I mean, that's an interesting line as well. Look, if that line turns out to be something that, is better than projected, then maybe the Canadiens can win some games. That fourth line also actually interesting with, Doc, the new addition with Armia and Evans. So listen, I don't think it's a complete, train wreck, and I don't know what they're saying up in Montreal. And I don't know if they have playoff hopes or not, but it's an interesting team. I think, you see some holes, but you see some potential upside as well.
All right. I'm glad you brought up Jake Allen shot props because that's a very good point with what he did last year. And if you look at their defense this year with more rookies than anything, he's most likely going to face quite a bit of shots. So definitely early on in the year, that's something else I'm going to be looking at to see if there's value there. And I'm sure you will be as well, occupancy. So I'm sure we'll cash some tickets together with Jake Allen on the shot props. Looking at the last 5 years and the futures for Montreal, they are plus 20,000 to win the division and plus 20,000 to hoist the Stanley Cup this year. Obviously, a big odds for a reason. If you look at their year last year, they had more wins in the 56-game season in 2020 than they did last year in the full game season. So that's how much this Montreal team fell off a cliff last year. They had 55 points last year, and now it's 73.5. So that's almost a 20-point difference, which is kind of surprising there. I won't be getting involved with the point total. I do think I like Montreal's offense. So if everything works out with their forwards and they can score, then that will help them win games. But their defense and goaltending is very suspect. And compared to facing other teams in this division, they're they're going to have some issues because there's some very high-powered offenses in this division. So overall, I do think Montreal will finish last in the division. But I think that division, the Atlantic and the Pacific, are going to be very competitive. I don't think there's going to be like a bottom team that's way behind everybody else. Maybe San Jose for the Pacific, but for the Atlantic, I think it's going to be pretty even. And I think Montreal will do better than last year, but I'm not sure if they're going to do 20 points better. That's like 10 wins. So that's a lot to improve on with suspect D and suspect goaltending. So obviously minus 4,000 to miss the playoffs. You can't really do anything with that. If you wanted to put a small bit on Montreal to make the playoffs, a plus 1,500. If you feel like they have a chance, then all the power to you. I won't be betting it, but that is a high price to make the playoffs. And they do have a pretty good offensive, pretty good group of forwards, in my opinion. So we'll have to see. No future bets for me on Montreal, but I do think they'll be improved from last year. Occupancy last 5 years and futures for Montreal. What do you think here?
Yeah, Terry, I'll just pick up from the last thing you said. I mean, I think they're going to slightly improve. I don't think they're going to be a 55-point team again. That would be pretty disappointing. And I think they'll land in the 60s somewhere, to be honest. If you look at just the bottom of the East last year, the Flyers and the Devils, Flyers had 61, Devils had 63, and then Ottawa had 73, and then Detroit 74. So I think that's kind of where they end up landing again. But if you think they will go over 73.5, you would be better betting their money lines throughout the season at plus prices, I believe, than laying a little juice for 73.5, because you're going to get big plus prices with them. So if you you cap every day and you look at the starters and things like that, see who, maybe they're playing against a team off a back-to-back, off a travel spot. Maybe they got a backup. I mean, that, the nice thing about, betting, in general, it's just we know these things. We see these lineups. We know who's in, who's out. Usually, there's a lot of resources at our disposal for that type of thing. I would not take the over 73.5 for the Canadiens. That is for sure. I would also not be taking them to make the playoffs, nor to win the division or the cup. But the nice thing about hockey is they made the cup run, right? So like, even with all the capping and with everything that was going on, they were clicking at the right time and were crushing it, back then, not too long ago. So you never know what can happen. It's COVID season, is what it is, but you never know. So just do your capping, see kind of how they're starting, look for soft lines, like those team totals, things like that. But yeah, Canadiens, it's a historic hockey franchise.
Yeah, for sure. They have the most Stanley Cups of any team in the NHL. So they'll always have that to keep them warm at night. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, they do have the most Stanley Cup wins. But that is our final team. One more video coming, the Boston Bruins, that was pre-recorded. I'll be setting that up after this show is done. But that is it. All the NHL team preview shows are done, all 32. So make sure to check the playlist on YouTube and check for what your favorite team is or any other teams that you might find interesting. The schedule for going forward, I posted on the regular shows. So 4 p.m. Eastern, Monday to Friday. Saturdays, there'll be a show at 12 or 1, and then there'll be a show at 8 or 9 for Sunday's games. No more Sunday show. So make sure to tune into that. But that finishes off the NHL season preview shows. NHL right around the corner. Super excited to be deep diving into NHL every day with some great cappers. So make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit the like button if you like the content. We appreciate all the support. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'm super excited hockey's back. Let's go Wild. Have a good one, guys.